The room settled after minutes of loud arguments. The gavel strikes finally brought silence, but the air still burned with tension. Vice President J.D. Vance sat straight, his heart steady but his mind racing. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Across from him, Justice Helen Whitaker adjusted her glasses, her expression now sharp, focused, and unshaken. Senator Coleman spoke carefully. Vice President Vance, the evidence you presented is serious, but Justice Whitaker has requested a formal review of the audio's authenticity. Until then, we will not draw conclusions. Whitaker leaned forward. I expect nothing less, Mr. Chairman. I will not allow my name to be dragged through mud. Without full verification, Vance nodded slightly, but his eyes were distant. His phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. Last warning. Leave this now. There are things you don't understand. He ignored it. Crossed the nation. Live news coverage exploded. Commentators debated the authenticity of the recording. Was J.D. Vance exposing corruption, or was this a dangerous political attack? The story took over every screen. Meanwhile, Vance's wife, Usha, was not sitting quietly. Back home, she was working alongside Ethan Cole, the hacker who had initially helped verify the files. Ethan looked pale, worried. We've got a bigger problem, Ethan whispered, eyes locked on his laptop. I traced the files. They didn't come from a government leak. They came from a private intelligence firm. Okay, and guess who owns that firm? Who? Usha asked quickly. A shell company connected to an international lobbyist group with ties to the Progressive American Fund. Usha's eyes widened. You're saying Vance was handed this evidence on purpose? Yeah, Ethan said. They wanted him to find it. It's a setup. Usha's heart dropped. She called Vance immediately. JD, listen to me carefully, she said, her voice urgent but controlled. You were meant to find this. It's not a leak, it's a trap. Vance's breath slowed. Pieces started falling into place. He had thought he was uncovering corruption. But now it seemed like someone was pulling the strings from both sides. Justice Whitaker sat calmly across the room, but her occasional glance toward him now seemed more dangerous. Did she know? Was she part of the trap, or was she another pawn? Senator Clara Hensley rose to speak again. Vice President Vance, until we have verification from neutral labs, I recommend pausing this line of accusation. Let's not destroy the integrity of our Supreme Court without absolute proof, Senator Ted Cruz countered. And let's not protect a justice just because it's uncomfortable to confront possible corruption. Chairman Coleman sighed. We will recess for 2 days to verify all evidence independently. No more debate today. The senators began leaving, but Vance stayed seated, deep in thought. His phone buzzed again. This time, a different message appeared. You're not the hero here. Check the missing files. He called Ethan back. Find the missing files now. Ethan worked quickly, digging through the encrypted files Vance had received. There's a gap. Some folders were deleted before you got them. Can you recover them? I'll try. As the hearing broke up, Whitaker approached Vance directly. For the first time, they spoke alone. You're smart, Mr. Vice President, she said quietly, but you're being used. Be careful. The people who set this up don't care about me or you or the truth. They care about controlling the system. Vance stared at her. So you admit you're part of it? Whitaker smiled faintly. I admit nothing. But you should ask yourself who benefits from tearing me down. It's not just your political rivals. She walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. Ethan called back an hour later. JD, I found something. The missing files they show this goes beyond Whitaker. There's mention of multiple judges, politicians, corporate leaders. It's a full network. But most importantly, Ethan paused, his voice tight. There's a note saying Operation Trinity. That's what they're calling it. It's a long game, and you just triggered their next move. Vance felt the walls closing in. He had believed he was exposing a scandal. But now it was clear. He was standing in the middle of something much larger, something that had been moving for years, something prepared to destroy anyone in its way. His phone buzzed again. "You've gone too far. You're on the list now." The message came with a blurry photo of Osha walking near their home. Vance's chest tightened. He wasn't afraid for himself, but his family was now in danger. This was no longer just a hearing. It was war. And it was only just beginning. J.D. Vance sat in his office, the weight of the unfolding conspiracy pressing heavily on his shoulders. His mind replayed the hearing, Justice Whitaker's calm words, and the threatening messages that refused to stop. The photo of Wusha secretly taken haunted him. Someone was watching every step of his family, and that changed everything. Ethan called again, his voice low and urgent. "JD, I recovered more files. The operation is international. These people aren't just targeting the Supreme Court. They've been influencing elections, legislation, even trade deals. The Progressive Fund is just one front. They're using both conservative and liberal faces. This isn't about ideology. It's about control." Vance rubbed his temples. How many people are involved? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Judges, senators, CEOs, and it's not just in America. Vance's heart beat faster. Is Whitaker the leader? Ethan replied firmly. She's part of it. But the real architect hides behind layers of cutouts. I traced one name that keeps popping up. Marcus Albright. He's connected to every funding channel. Vance had heard that name before. Albright was a powerful lobbyist known for moving quietly between international capitals. His hands were in every major deal, but he was invisible to the public. A soft knock interrupted the call. Usha stepped in, her eyes sharp but calm. "I just got a call," she said carefully. "From Whitaker." Vance stood, surprised. "What did she say?" She asked to meet. "Privately." "Tonight?" Narrowed his eyes. "It could be a trap. Or maybe she knows she's cornered," Uche replied. She didn't sound like someone who wants to destroy us. She sounded tired. Like she's been fighting something too big to escape. Vance agreed to the meeting, but quietly arranged for additional security to watch Osha and their son. That night, in a small cafe on the outskirts of Washington, Vance met Whitaker. She was alone. No guards, no advisors, just a small bag at her side. She spoke first. "Do you really think I'm the monster here?" Vance kept his voice firm. "I think you've compromised your position. I think you've been protecting interests that should have no place in the courtroom." Whitaker sighed. "There's more to this than you know. Marcus Albright isn't just a lobbyist. He's a broker. He arranges favors, careers, money. For years, he's kept judges under. Quiet contracts. Not all of us agreed to it willingly. You could have walked away and ended up dead. Or worse, have my family destroyed. They don't just remove people like me, JD. They erase them." She pushed a small USB drive across the table. "This contains communication logs, meetings, names, enough to break open part of the network." "I'm done running." Vance hesitated, sensing a trap. "Why trust me?" Whitaker looked tired. "Because you're the only one reckless enough to stand up against them publicly. You think I was shocked because you exposed me?" "No. I was shocked because you walked straight into their game and didn't even flinch." Vance took the USB, but didn't let his guard down. "What happens now?" Whitaker leaned in. "They won't come after me first. I'm already damaged. They'll come after you and your family." Her words chilled him. His family was already marked. "They'll attack you from the shadows. Financial pressure. False scandals. Maybe worse." Vance's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "Enjoy your last free day." Whitaker stood up. "Be careful, JD. You've pulled the curtain, but you haven't seen the full stage yet." She left quickly, disappearing into the night. Vance returned home and handed the USB to Ethan. "Dig into this now." We need to know who else is involved. Hours later, Ethan called back, his voice shaken. JD, the files, it's worse than we thought. There are sitting senators, media executives, judges, foreign diplomats. Some of them you've worked with, some your friends. Names, Vance demanded. The most surprising one, Senator Thomas Reeve, the Judiciary Chairman. Vance's stomach turned. Reeve had overseen the entire hearing, was supposed to be neutral. There's more, Ethan whispered. There's a meeting scheduled tomorrow night. Location's encrypted, but I can find it. Pulse quickened. We crashed that meeting. No cameras, no stage. It's just the truth. Ah, but JD, Ethan warned, if we go there, we may not come back. Vance's voice was steady. We can't stop now. Outside, a dark sedan parked across the street, the same one Ethan had seen circling the house earlier. The enemy was no longer hiding. The next move would decide everything. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room was filled with sharp tension. The morning sun shone through the tall glass windows, but inside the air felt heavy, as if everyone knew something big was about to happen. Reporters lined the back walls, their cameras ready, their fingers itching to type. Politicians whispered quietly to their aides, their eyes fixed on the main table. Vice President J.D. Vance entered the room slowly, his steps firm but calm. His face gave nothing away, but in his hand he carried a thick file. The bright red stamp on the front read, Top Secret. It was not part of the day's agenda, and that made everyone in the room nervous. As Vance sat down, his eyes scanned the senators sitting across from him. Some looked curious, others worried. At the far end of the room, sitting tall and composed, was Supreme Court Justice Helen Whitaker. Her hands rested neatly on the table, her expression as cold as marble. Her face was unreadable, but her fingers tapped slowly, as if waiting for the storm to begin. The chairman, Senator Daniel Coleman, cleared his throat and began the session. We are here today to discuss judicial independence and the integrity of the courts. His voice echoed, but everyone was watching Vance. The cameras zoomed in on him as he slowly opened the file. Honorable Senators, Vance began, his voice calm but sharp. I did not come here to speak about routine matters. I came here to reveal something the American people deserve to know. The room went completely silent. Vance lifted a sheet of paper from the file, his hand steady. This document, he said, contains evidence that a secret deal was made between Supreme Court Justice Helen Whitaker and a progressive political fund. A loud murmur spread through the room. Some senators looked at each other in disbelief. Reporters started typing furiously, and the camera flashes blinked like lightning. Everyone turned toward Justice Whitaker, but she did not move. Her eyes remained locked on Vance. She promised favorable rulings, Vance continued, his voice rising just enough to cut through the whispers on cases related to voting rights and climate change in exchange for quiet political support from this fund. Senator Clara Hensley, known for her sharp tongue, interrupted Vice President Vance. Are you accusing a sitting Supreme Court justice of corruption based on a single document? Vance's eyes narrowed. There is more, he said firmly. He held up another sheet, a copy of an email. This email, he explained, is from a leader of the Progressive Fund, written to a known associate of Justice Whitaker. It clearly lists expected cooperation on specific court cases before those cases were even assigned. The senators leaned forward, some shaking their heads, others nodding in concern. The room felt like it might explode. Whitaker sat still. She did not speak, but her hands, now tightly clasped, showed the weight pressing down on her. Vance did not stop. This is not just an accident, he said. There are more emails, secret messages, and financial records that point to this relationship. He closed the file carefully and looked directly at Justice Whitaker. I also hold a recording, he said, that may make this connection undeniable. But I will not play it yet. The room held its breath. Senator Coleman leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. Vice President Vance, do you understand the seriousness of what you are saying? Vance nodded. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I understand. Justice Whittaker finally moved. She adjusted her glasses and looked straight at Vance. Her voice was low, cold, and perfectly controlled. These are strong accusations, Vice President. Are you prepared to prove them fully? Vance didn't blink. Yes, he said. Across the country, the hearing was being broadcast live. Millions of people watched from their homes, offices, and phones. Social media exploded within minutes. Some viewers praised Vance as a hero standing up for truth. Others accused him of launching a political attack without proof. Commentators debated furiously. Is this a turning point in American justice? One journalist asked on live TV, or is this a dangerous political stunt? Inside the hearing room, the silence deepened. The senators knew this was no longer just a simple hearing. It had become a battlefield. Vance sat back in his chair, but his heart pounded. He knew what he had just done. He had lit a match in a room full of gasoline. Justice Whittaker remained calm, but her foot tapped quietly under the table. The fight had only just begun. The tension from the morning still lingered as the hearing resumed after a short recess. Vice President J.D. Vance sat straight, his fingers resting on the edge of the table, his gaze sharp and locked onto Justice Helen Whittaker. Reporters whispered nervously behind their cameras, their screens buzzing with thousands of live comments pouring in from across the country. The room had become a stage, and every word now carried the weight of national attention. Chairman Daniel Coleman cleared his throat. Vice President Vance, you may continue. Vance slowly opened the file again. His movements were calm, but the pressure inside him was building. He knew what he was about to reveal would send shockwaves beyond this room. Honorable Senators, Vance began, his voice steady, the documents I presented this morning only scratched the surface. What I am about to show you now will leave no room for doubt. He held up a printed screenshot of WhatsApp message exchange. The senators leaned in, the text displayed on the large screen behind him. These are direct messages, Vance explained. Between an advisor to Justice Whittaker and the director of the Progressive American Fund, in these messages, they openly discussed the timing of rulings, the expected outcomes, and political strategies tied to these court decisions. The messages were short, but the meaning was clear. The justice will move in our favor. Confirm the donation timeline. Voting rights ruling expected by September. Prepare the media response. The room buzzed with shock. Senator Clara Hensley, who had earlier challenged Vance, now looked less confident. She glanced toward Justice Whittaker, waiting for her reaction. But Whittaker remained still, her face blank. She sat like a marble statue, though a sharp observer would have noticed the way her knuckles tightened around her pen. Vance wasn't finished. He paused, giving the weight of the messages time to sink in. He then carefully placed a small USB on the table. This device, Vance said, contains an audio recording. It was sent to me anonymously. I verified its authenticity through 2 independent security labs. He looked up, his voice now louder, carrying the sharp edge of a prosecutor. In this recording, a woman's voice matching Justice Whittaker's is heard discussing commitments on future cases with a representative of the same fund. He did not press play yet. The threat of the recording alone was enough to freeze the room. Whittaker finally spoke, her tone cool but firm. Vice President Vance, anonymous evidence is dangerous. It can be created, manipulated, or misunderstood. You know that? Vance didn't look away. That is why I had it verified. Twice. By independent experts. Senator Coleman intervened. We will allow Vice President Vance to continue. Whittaker's expression hardened, but her voice remained smooth. Then I demand the full chain of custody for that evidence. Otherwise, this is a smear. not justice. Vance nodded. I'm prepared to provide everything, including the experts' reports. The hearing felt like a slow-burning fire, each word another drop of fuel. Across the country, social media was in chaos. Some viewers believed Vance had uncovered the scandal of the decade. Others accused him of using political theater to damage a progressive icon. News anchors interrupted regular broadcasts. This could reshape the public's trust in the Supreme Court, one analyst said. But is Vance's evidence truly solid? Inside the room, Vance took a deep breath. He pressed play. The voice on the recording filled the silent chamber. It was a woman's voice, calm, careful, but clear. We need solid guarantees on voting rights and environmental rulings. This will keep our partners satisfied and ensure the court's direction remains favorable. There was a pause in the recording. I'll handle it. There's understanding between us. Some senators looked at each other in disbelief. Reporters furiously typed every word. Senator Ted Cruz, sitting behind Vance, leaned forward, nodding slightly. Whitaker's face showed the faintest flicker of emotion. For the first time, she adjusted her seat, her fingers tapping quickly now. That voice is not mine, she said coldly. You've brought me a doctored tape. Vance looked directly at her. We will let the experts decide. Senator Hensley stood, pointing her finger at Vance. You're attacking the foundation of our system with claims built on shadows. Senator Cruz's voice rose. And you're defending a system that may have already been bought. Room erupted in shouting. Chairman Coleman banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. But the lines were already drawn. In the chaos, Vance's phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Another anonymous message appeared. You were warned. This is bigger than you know. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of what he had started. This wasn't just about one justice. It was about an entire system. He looked back at Whitaker. She stared at him, calm but deadly, as if to say, you're not ready for what's coming next? The battle had just begun. The hearing resumed after the tense recess. J.D. Vance returned to the podium, his face steady but his heart heavy with the threat he had just received. His phone was still in his pocket, buzzing silently, but he ignored it. He could not afford to show fear now. Justice Helen Whitaker walked in with a new energy. She had spent the break with her legal team, and now she seemed ready for battle. The room, packed with senators, journalists, and viewers watching live, buzzed with electric tension. Chairman Coleman banged the gavel again. Vice President Vance, please continue your presentation. Vance raised his hand. Before I continue, I want to remind everyone that my duty is to the American people. I will not be silenced by threats. He then revealed the secret recording. The voice on the tape was female, and though slightly distorted, it was chillingly direct. We need decisions that favor our priorities. Voting rights first, climate rulings next. The senators leaned in closer. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters typed, quickly capturing every word. Justice Whitaker's face tightened. That is not my voice, she said firmly, but a small tremble in her tone betrayed her. Vance then played another clip. This time, the same voice mentioned a meeting date. Whitaker quickly interrupted. I was in Chicago that day giving a public speech. I have proof. The room turned to her. Whitaker's team displayed a video on the big screen. Showed her speaking at a law conference, wearing a navy blazer, answering live questions on constitutional law. The date and time matched the supposed secret meeting. Senator Clara Hensley stood immediately. It appears this accusation has serious gaps. If Justice Whitaker was in Chicago, how could she be part of this secret meeting in Washington? Vance narrowed his eyes. He felt something was off. Justice Whitaker's presence in Chicago doesn't erase the emails, the funding trails, and the signed notes. The truth is layered. Whitaker's lawyer, Margaret Kleen, stepped in. The emails mention her name, but none are directly written by her. Names can be misused. Messages can be twisted. This is not solid proof. Vance was not shaken. But the handwritten note, verified as hers, mentions RV voting rights. That's no accident, Whitaker replied calmly. I write about voting rights all the time. It's my work. A note without context means nothing. The hearing room filled with murmurs again. The battle lines were moving. Some senators began to question if Vance's evidence was as strong as it first appeared. Social media was now split even more, some calling it the biggest scandal in years, others claiming it was a political trap. Senator Ted Cruz finally spoke. The evidence is serious. But the timeline, the audio, and the emails, everything needs independent review. Chairman Coleman agreed. We cannot decide today. The Judiciary Committee will appoint an independent investigator. Justice Whitaker's expression remained calm. But Vance noticed something in her eyes, a flicker of relief, or maybe something deeper. As Vance packed his files, another anonymous message popped up on his phone. You have 2 days to stop, or you will lose more than your career. He looked at his wife, Usha, sitting in the audience. She gave him a small, supportive nod. She knew he would not back down. But in the shadows of the hearing room, Vance now realized the fight was bigger than just one judge. There was a network powerful, dangerous, and ready to protect itself at any cost. And they had just begun to fight back. J.D. Vance sat in his office late into the night, staring at the anonymous message on his phone. You have 2 days to stop, or you will lose more than your career. The words burned in his mind. He was used to political threats, but this felt different, closer, personal. Asha sat across from him, quietly reading through the files again. We knew this would happen, she said softly. But they're moving faster than we expected. Vance nodded. They're protecting someone bigger than Whitaker. His phone buzzed again. A new anonymous message. Check your security. Detail. His heart dropped. He immediately called Agent Ryan from his protection team. Change all routes. Change the drivers. No patterns. Assume they know everything. Ryan didn't ask questions. Understood, sir. Vance and Usha knew the danger had crossed into their personal lives now. The next morning, the Judiciary Committee announced that an independent investigation would begin. But Vance felt the clock ticking. As he entered the Senate building, Sarah Mitchell, the journalist who helped him verify the leaked documents, was waiting outside. Her face was pale. JD, we need to talk. It's about the recording. Vance paused. What about it? Had a contact review the audio file again. It was altered. Vance froze. What do you mean? The voice, it's real, but the timing was changed. Parts were cut and rearranged to make it sound worse than it really was. His chest tightened. Was the original sent to me? Sarah shook her head. No, someone wanted you to expose this, but in the wrong way. Someone set you up. Vance's mind raced. The evidence was tampered with. His entire case was now weak. His political enemies would use this against him. His credibility would collapse. Who sent you the file? He asked. I don't know. It came from an encrypted account. No name, no trace. At that moment, Yusha called him urgently. JD, our security cameras just picked up a break-in at our house. They didn't take anything, but they left a note. His voice hardened. What did it say? Stop digging. The next one won't be a warning. Vance's jaw clenched. They're everywhere. He rushed back to the hearing. Justice Whitaker was already there, waiting with her lawyers, Tom and Sharp. She knew the momentum was shifting. Senator Hensley addressed the room. We have serious concerns about the authenticity of the evidence provided by Vice President Vance. Until independent analysis confirms its validity, we must pause further action. Vance stood. I understand. But I also know this isn't just about Justice Whitaker. There's a network manipulating the courts, politics, and even our security. I won't stop until I find them. Whitaker looked at him directly. Be careful, Vice President. Not all battles are worth the cost. Her words sounded like a warning. The hearing adjourned, but the storm was far from over. Outside, reporters surrounded Vance. Some called him a hero. Others called him reckless. His phone buzzed again. A new message. You're looking in the wrong place. It was never about Whitaker. Vance read the message twice. Suddenly, the pieces started to shift in his mind. Someone wanted him to attack Whitaker. Someone wanted this public fight. But why? Usha arrived by his side. He'd been following. Their trail, she said. But maybe they've been leading us. Vance realized the truth. The real enemy was still hiding somewhere deeper in the system. The documents, the audio, the setup pit was all a distraction. J.D. Vance sat alone in his car as the rain tapped against the windows like a ticking clock. The anonymous message still glowed on his phone screen. You're looking in the wrong place. It was never about Whitaker. He felt the weight of it now. He had been led into this fight. Whitaker was never the final target. She was the perfect distraction. Usha called him from the safe house. J.D., I've been digging. I found something. Her voice was tight, urgent. The money trail. It doesn't stop at the Progressive Fund. There's a shell company. It's tied to a private intelligence group. Vance's pulse quickened. Who controls it? There was a pause on the line. Your predecessor's advisory team, people loyal to the old network. Some of them are still inside the White House. They wanted you to burn Whitaker to protect someone else. Vance leaned his head against the seat. The enemy wasn't just outside. They were around him, maybe even shaking his hand every day. He returned to his office. Sarah Mitchell was waiting for him with new files, her eyes exhausted but sharp. I confirmed the audio source. The edits came from inside a secured government server. Someone high up wanted you to go public with the wrong version. They wanted me to crash? Vance whispered. Sarah looked at him carefully. You were supposed to destroy your own credibility. That night, J.D. Vance called an emergency press conference. Cameras from all networks pointed at him as he stepped onto the small stage. Today, he began, his voice steady. I exposed corruption. But I now realize I was given manipulated evidence. I want to speak to the American people directly. The room went silent. I've discovered that the documents and audio I presented were tampered with. I was targeted to become a weapon against Justice Whitaker. I was used to create a false war. Journalists exchanged glances, stunned. This was bigger than political sides. It was an operation to divide us. Two pit leaders against each other, so the real criminals could remain hidden. Senator Hensley, watching live, was speechless. Justice Whitaker, at home, watched the broadcast, her eyes softening for the first time. Vance's voice grew sharper. I'm not stepping down. I'm not backing away. I am expanding this investigation. Whoever you are, wherever you are. Wherever you are. We'll find you. Social media exploded. Some called him brave. Others called him reckless. Some questioned whether he was now covering his own mistake. But the story had changed. The nation was now watching not a courtroom drama, but a shadow war. Later that night, Vance received another message. You were supposed to fall. You still can. A video attachment followed. It showed his daughter's school. His heart pounded. His hands shook, but his resolve hardened like steel. He called Usha. Move her now. Full protection. Usha's voice was calm but fierce. We'll keep her safe. You go find them. Vance knew this wasn't a Senate fight anymore. This was a war buried inside the system, where enemies didn't wear uniforms and the front lines changed every day. But one thing was clear. They had started this game. But he would finish it.